The knock on my front door wasn't just loud. It was bold, entitled, like whoever stood on the other side believed they owned the place. When I opened it, I wasn't even surprised. The entire HOA board was lined up across my porch, as if they were about to announce new commandments. And right at the front, naturally, stood Karen wearing oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy sky, and that unmistakable "I'm in charge here" smirk plastered across her face. "We've had a meeting," she began, in a tone that suggested I should feel honored, "and we unanimously agreed that your ranch would be absolutely perfect for my daughter's wedding. The scenery, the acreage, that charming, rustic vibe, it's exactly the aesthetic we're going for." She said aesthetic like it was sacred law. Then she extended a laminated Pinterest board toward me. Sunflowers, wine barrels, strings of fairy lights, a skinny guy in suspenders holding a chicken like it was a prop from a low-budget romance movie. I looked at the board. Then I looked at her. "No," I said. Her smile twitched. "I'm sorry." "No," I repeated calmly. "I'm not interested. It's not happening." Karen's expression collapsed faster than a Jenga tower in a daycare. "But the entire board agrees," she insisted, gesturing behind her. "It's community-centered. We'd clean everything afterward. We'd even compensate you with exposure." "Exposure doesn't build fences, Karen," I cut in. "And if I allow one event here, suddenly, the neighborhood event venue, weddings, baby showers, HOA chili cook-offs. Absolutely not. My ranch. My rules." The board members shifted behind her, avoiding eye contact like kids caught cheating on a test. One of them muttered, "Maybe we should consider another location." Karen spun toward him so dramatically, she looked ready to star in Real Housewives of Suburbia. "No, this is the place. It's my daughter's special day." Then she turned back to me, lowering her voice into that syrupy sweet tone people use right before they threaten you politely. "You'll regret this." I smiled pleasantly. "Have a nice evening." They left in a dramatic shuffle, Karen stomping so hard I half expected cracks to form in my driveway. When I shut the door, a strange chill ran down my spine. You know that feeling? The one that whispers, "This isn't over." Still, I brushed it off. What exactly could she do? It was my land, privately owned, no shared property agreements, no loopholes. But here's what unsettled me most: Karen didn't explode. She didn't send a furious email in all caps. She didn't start a gossip campaign immediately. She went silent, and silence from someone like Karen? That was unnatural. People, when told no, complain to a friend. Maybe sulk. Maybe try bribing you with a gift basket and a decent bottle of wine. Karen, however, entered what I can only describe as her quiet fury phase. The first move? A freshly baked pie was left on my doorstep the next morning. Apple, cinnamon, perfect lattice crust. A sticky note attached that read, "Still hoping you'll reconsider." It smelled like cinnamon and manipulation. I didn't touch it. Next came the neighbor diplomacy tour. "Hey," Tom from 3 houses down said casually while pretending to check his mailbox. "Karen mentioned you're being kind of difficult about the wedding. Says it would be good for community spirit." I stared at him like he'd sprouted an extra limb. Since when does the HOA care about community spirit? They fined me last month for having a decorative garden gnome. Tom suddenly found his mailbox fascinating, but Karen wasn't finished. The following afternoon, a landscaping truck rolled up to my ranch gate. 3 guys jumped out with trimmers and clipboards, as if on a mission. "We're here to spruce up the property for a special event," one of them announced. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. "You might want to turn that truck around. There is no event." They exchanged confused looks before retreating. As they drove off, I glanced across the road and spotted Karen standing on her porch with binoculars. The second our eyes met, she ducked down like a raccoon caught rummaging through trash. Her final effort came on a Wednesday evening. She knocked again, alone this time. No entourage, no clipboard committee. She wore a flowing pastel dress, the kind that looked suspiciously bridal adjacent, as though she was already rehearsing for the ceremony. "Listen," she began in a voice dipped in artificial sweetness, "I understand your hesitation, but it's just one day, only one. My daughter is devastated. This wedding could bring everyone together. It could be Healing. Healing. I held her gaze without blinking. No means no. This discussion is over. Karen didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply blinked once, gave a slow nod, and turned away, and that's when I knew. When Karen walked away quietly, it wasn't a surrender. It was a strategy. There was tension in the air the entire week. Not loud, not obvious, just that strange stillness that settles in before something explodes. The calm before an HOA-sized hurricane. I felt it coming. I just didn't realize how catastrophic it would be. Saturday morning arrived bright and deceptively peaceful. Birds were chirping. The sun was blazing across the pasture. Everything looked normal until I noticed my ranch gate standing wide open. I never leave it open, ever. A cold prickle crept up my spine. I drove slowly up the gravel path, expecting maybe a confused delivery driver, or perhaps another one of Karen's unauthorized landscaping ambushes. What I found instead made me slam on the brakes so hard my truck fishtailed sideways in the dirt. There was a wedding, not a small gathering, not a rehearsal, a full-scale, white chair-lined, music-blasting wedding. Rows of folding chairs stretched across my pasture. Strings of fairy lights hung between trees I didn't even know were sturdy enough to hold them. A DJ stood beneath a gazebo that absolutely did not belong to me, and a catering crew was carefully arranging shrimp cocktails like we were hosting royalty at a 5-star resort. My property had been completely hijacked. I jumped out of the truck, fury surging through me, and marched toward the spectacle. I barely made it 10 feet before 2 broad-shouldered men in matching polo shirts stepped in front of me like nightclub bouncers. "Sorry, sir. Private event," one of them said calmly. I stared at him. "Private?" "Yes, sir. This is my land." They didn't move. Didn't blink. "We were contracted through the HOA. Security clearance required." "Security clearance?" I let out a sharp, almost unhinged laugh. "I own this property. There's no clearance higher than that." One of them lifted his walkie-talkie and muttered something into it, and then, like a villain making her grand entrance, Karen appeared. She swept forward in a floor-length gown that looked like a prom dress collided with a chandelier, glittering, dramatic, excessive. She strutted across my lawn as though it were a runway. "Isn't it gorgeous?" she called out brightly. "I told you it would be perfect." My vision went red. "You broke into my property," I snapped. "This is trespassing. Have you completely lost your mind?" Karen gave a delicate shrug. "We attempted diplomacy, but when the community truly wants something, sometimes initiative is necessary." Behind her, guests were applauding. Music began to swell. A minister cleared his throat and opened a book. A flower girl skipped down what used to be my vegetable patch, tossing petals with reckless joy. I stood there in disbelief for half a second longer. Then I turned on my heel and marched toward the barn. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I could get muddy. The fire hose was still connected. My water pressure was legendary strong enough to knock over a stubborn fence post. I dragged the hose across the dirt like it was some ancient siege weapon. Each step back toward the ceremony felt like marching into battle. Guests were laughing, sipping champagne, taking selfies as if they weren't trespassing on private property. I reached the corner of the barn, twisted the valve slowly, and listened as the quiet hiss built into a roaring surge of pressure. Then I stepped out from behind the barn and pulled the trigger. The first blast caught the string quartet mid-note. Violins screeched off-key as sheet music went flying through the air like startled birds. Shrieks erupted. A groomsman lost his footing and slid into the mud. Karen spun around just in time for the second jet of water to hit her squarely. It flattened her elaborate hair instantly. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in dramatic black trails. Her glittering gown clung to her like a soaked curtain. I shouted over the chaos, "Hey, Karen! Didn't realize trespassing came with complimentary showers. What is wrong with you?" She screeched, sputtering. "What's wrong with me?" I fired back. "What's wrong with you setting up a DJ booth on my property without permission?" I turned the hose toward the decorative arch. It crumpled in slow motion, collapsing like soggy cardboard. Guests scattered in every direction, heels slipping, suits splattered, champagne glasses abandoned mid-toast. Some dove behind bushes. Others ran for their cars. The shrimp cocktail table took a direct hit and erupted into airborne seafood confetti. Karen tried to regain control. "Stop him. He's insane," she screamed at the security guards, but they stood there drenched and motionless. One of them finally cleared his throat. "Ma'am, technically, he's defending his property." Karen looked as though someone had struck her with a wet glove. "You're fired," she shrieked. The bride stood frozen in the wreckage, veil plastered to her face, mascara streaming, like she was starring in a tragic opera. The groom stared blankly into the distance, clearly reevaluating every life decision that had led him here. And me? I stood tall in the mud, hose in hand, feeling like justice had just been pressure washed into existence. Eventually, the police arrived, not to arrest me, because the entire incident had been recorded on my security cameras, every unauthorized entry, every decoration hammered into my soil, every act of trespassing, lawful entry, property damage, illegal use of private land. Karen had thrown a wedding on stolen ground and received an unexpected baptism courtesy of my ranch hose. By the time the patrol cars left, the fairy lights were sagging, the chairs were overturned, and the so-called perfect wedding looked like the aftermath of a tropical storm. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't the calm before a hurricane anymore. It was the quiet after one.